You know the phrase that pays kank. You know, you love it. You love to see it. You don't have to like it, but you have to respect it. Guys, welcome back. You know what's about to happen. Put your butts in the seat, guys. We're ready to blast off. Guys, if you see these three smiling angelic countenances, 2 or 3 things must be true. 1, it must be Wednesday somewhere on the earth. It must be, oh gosh. It must be 8 p.m. EST somewhere on this rock. It's EST or EDT. Well, that's a whole other.
EBT. I'm going to give me some.
That's a whole other thing.
Give me some Nutter Butter.
And 3, it must mean it's pinch me. I must be dreaming time. Guys, welcome back to Pencil to Pencil, your weekly live cast brought to you by 3 expert cartoonists. Where else on the video scopes can you find such treasures? Guys, I'm your first host. I'm JAMAR NICHOLAS. I wear many hats besides this one. I am the 2nd vice president of the National Cartoonist Society and also the Philadelphia chapter chair. What's that? Oh, is that? That must be my one of my books at Scholastic Graphics. Leon Extraordinary is a series that I write and draw. Leon Worst Friends Forever is in stores now. Cop it. Why don't you? And I have some news about the next Leon book. I would be remiss. I would be in remission if I did not introduce my co-host, cohort, and co-conspirator. Guys, he just cashed in his Money in the Bank briefcase. Next week, he will be fighting. I don't know who the champion is. I think they're going to have a battle royal to find out who the next world champion of webcomics is. But my money's always on, by God, is Stone Cold Steve Conley. What's up, Steve Conley?
Gentlemen, so good to see you.
How are you?
My name is Steve Conley. I write and draw the webcomic The Middle Age, which you can find at middleagecomic.com. It's on Webtoons. It's on Tapas. It's on Go Comics. It's now also on Global Comics and Fable. Fables.pro. That's a spinoff web. Top Web Comics has got a site for hosting your webcomics. I'm trying that. I'll let people know what I think of it. So far, so good. But you can read The Middle Age on those various websites. I also make TTRPG stuff. So if you play the Dungeons and the Dragons, you can do a little bit of that.
In the Dragon.
And Wednesdays are Sunday. at Carvel. And I would be remiss if I did not introduce the Tower Power, the man of the hour, too sweet to be sour, the marvel of mark making, the maestro of comics, and Dark Hawk's daddy. It's the magnificent Mike Manley.
Hello, everyone. I am the masterful mark maker himself. And I've probably drawn your childhood, as we find out. This is my 41st year working as a professional cartoonist.
Mike, how do you have that down to the nub? Like, you know exactly when that date changes. Do you have it on the calendar somewhere when you started?
I remember coming out east in August, and I was working on that book for DC. So I always figure, July, August was my actual pay date.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, it's 41 and counting.
Do you count the day you got the check, or you count the day you started drawing?
Well, I suppose you can look at it either way, right? There's the day you start drawing, but when you got paid, that counts.
Yeah, it counts.
Right? Because until you get paid, it's just like, well, they could say no. Right. When they pay you, they're like, okay, here you go, kid. So, they pay you.
Mike, did you have like when a restaurant first starts, they put the first dollar in the register on the wall? You have your first check, canceled checks in a frame somewhere.
I think for a while I actually did, and I bet in that morass of my attic somewhere. I mean, I have seen some royalty statements and voucher stubs from the 80s.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
And then when you would get paid, they would have a thing attached to it that would say how many thousands of copies, how many copies you sold, and that was your royalty.
Mm-hmm. Like a little report statement.
Yeah, basically,
mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I probably still have a bunch of those up in the attic.
That's really funny.
Jamar, you said you might have some news? You got some news for us?
You know what? My news is that I'm a couple of days away from my turning in Leon 3. So I have like a couple of pages left to finish, and then it's turn it over to the maestros at editorial at graphics, and that that starts the next turn of the die, where I have edits, and I still have cover stuff to do, and there's a lot of time in between. But as far as my part is concerned, it's almost done.
Well, the major lift will be done, right?
Yeah.
Wow.
When you send it in, then they send you back galleys with it lettered?
That happens a little later. Probably the first thing will happen is we have notes. So there might be, and I saw a lot of this in the first book. On page 267, panel 3, Leon has 6 fingers. That kind of stuff. So I have, I'm sure there's going to be some notes.
Are they that hands-on with the art?
Yeah. Well, I mean, just in the sense that they want to make sure that I didn't draw 3 noses on somebody.
Is it in color? Is it in color at this point, or is it the line work?
Oh, this is all the line work, and the rest of the year is going to be production. So production is lettering, coloring, and all that other stuff. Trade dress, all those other things. So this book's not coming out until 2026. So you can hold your breath for a little bit longer.
It's not on the hot list we're going to see in the comic book shop in like weeks.
No, with
somebody's going to be like not sleeping for like 4 days while they color it
with wet ink all over your hands. No, there's the process is going, and trust the process. Before we bring in our guests, we got a question from the chat. Hello, chat. Paul Pate, what up, Paul Pate? Paul Pate asks 3 expert cartoonists, how do you guys show week after week so consistently with such great guests. How do you do it? Steve, how do we do it?
It's a miracle. I don't know. It's you guys do it. I try to recruit people, and I've run a handful, but like I'll be like, okay, what do we have for the next month? And you'll say, okay, I've got these 3 living legends. I'm like, so yeah. For anyone who's approached me and said I want to be on, you know why? It's because we've got amazing guests like we do tonight. So we're booked solid. It's amazing. It's amazing.
Yeah, if the maker willing, we're going to have a monstrous fall, and tonight is no exception. But I think we're almost booked full September. I got a lot of promise rings for October, so it's going to be a humdinger.
And it's tough because the guests are they're always working on stuff, and you never know what their schedule is like.
Yeah, there are some people I talked to that were like, "Can we talk in November?" So, and this is like in May. I'm like, yeah.
By then it'll be sort of like the end of con season.
Yeah, or people are on deadline or they're coming off a tour. What a busy life we live. All right, guys, let's do some intros. Guys, Ray Lago is with us tonight. I'm very excited. This is my first time meeting Ray. I'm very familiar with his magnificent work, and we're going to have a really great chat. I would be remiss if we just brought him in here cold. Mike, can you say a couple of words about Ray before we bring him in?
Well, Ray's one of those artists that's had a great and long career, and one of the reasons why I was excited to have him come on the show, besides the fact that his work is, obviously great in quality, but is the fact that we're always talking about on this podcast, your career is a long time, right? So, Ray has worked for Reader's Digest and Scholastic, and but also Marvel and DC, Harris, Wizards of the Coast. So he's had commercial comic book fantasy stuff, but he also started and worked in regular illustration. He teaches at FIT. He studied with Bert Silverman, who was one of the great classic illustrators back in the day, who also sort of moved into fine art. I believe he did the cover for Aqualung for Jethro Tull back in the day. So one of the things I find interesting is when you talk to someone like Ray, is you get a real example of how if you have a long career, you're going to have a lot of different phases. And I think a lot of people think, oh, you just do one thing. You just do one. And I would say that going into the future, you will probably do more and more variety of things. So I think it's also interesting to talk to an artist who's had that much experience, because there's probably some through lines at this point that maybe you didn't predict in the beginning.
Right. Well, I'm excited to bring him in, and also I'm not going to surprise anybody with this, but they just added sound effects to StreamYard.
What?
Oh man, we're in trouble now. That slide whistle is looking real tippy. So, but I'm not going to do that. Let's bring in Ray, guys. Welcome to Pencil to Pencil, Ray Lago. Ping! That was from my voice. I did that. Welcome, Ray. Hello.
Hi. Hey guys.
Nice to see you. Thanks for
yeah. Thank God.
Yeah. No, I'm not going to do that tonight.
Get that Bob Clampett weird whistle sound.
So, Mike, you have the floor. I'm going to check the chat. Let's get started.
Welcome to the show, Ray. I've wanted to have you on for a while. I've always enjoyed your work, but I also think that it's really important, I think, in the times we are in, for the senior members of the art community to talk and share. I mean, I know you're you're a teacher, so I'm sure you're probably always doing that, where you're, you know, every year there's a fresh crop of people who want to do this for a living. And I know I just mentored someone this summer, and were interested in becoming an inker. And, you know, the field of comics and wanting to be an inker is very different than it was even like 10 years ago. So I was very interested to, also when I found out that you also studied with Bert Silverman, who was a great, not only was a very successful commercial artist, but then he moved into fine art.
On Bert, because you brought him up in Aqualung, Bert always was doing fine art while he was doing illustration. I learned that once I studied with him. So he was always exhibiting in galleries from like the beginning, but, you know, illustrating to make a living. And one time, because I studied with him over a course of 3 years, not always attending each semester, which is sort of a semester, not like at a college. This is privately with a group at his home, his private atelier. But one time, I don't know why, but a bunch of us were hanging out afterwards, and we were talking about issues with some of the work he'd done where he wasn't getting paid for it being used, like the art. He did artwork for postage stamps for the government, for the post office, composers, really beautiful pieces. And they're being used on tote bags and all kinds of stuff. And he's like, hey, you know, and the subject of the Aqualung, you know, cover came up that was used likewise many years before and since. And I just mentioned to him how struck I was by that. I didn't even know who he was when I saw that, you know, cover. And I for some reason, I guess I knew him well enough that I thought I could poke him a little. And I said, I don't know who this guy is, but this guy's amazing. He's no Frank Frazetta, but he's really good. And Bert gave me an elbow to the rib, like immediately. So, and I'll take a poke in the rib from Bert Silverman anytime. And by the way, Bert posed for me. He did me the kindness. I wasn't studying with him anymore, but I was painting a cover for Acclaim Comics, you know, which is kind of Valiant afterwards. And they had the Classics Illustrated reprint line of old ones in digest form, small size. And they had me do a couple of covers, and one of them was Faust. And I talked to Bert and I said, Bert, would you like to pose as Faust for me? And he stroked his chin beards and said, I think I make a pretty good Faust, like that. And he posed for Faust. So it's like one of my favorite pieces because I got to paint, you know, amazing, a great teacher, just a top painter. I mean, an important realist painter, really. He's got quite a legacy. I saw him a couple of years ago. He had a one-man show in the Salmagundi Club, and it was older work, but fairly recent and stuff. He had reworks, a lot of stuff I'd never seen before. I barely got to see him because he was the belle of the ball, you know, basically. So everyone wanted a piece of him. And it was, you know, opening night, so to speak. And it was evening, and he talked smartly, cogently, 100% Bert. He's 97 going on 98.
Wow.
So this is a couple of years ago, but still. And he was sharp as a tack. I was able to just nab him before I'd lose him for all the people who were chatting with him. And I basically had to reintroduce myself. We haven't seen each other in, I don't know, maybe 20 years, 15, 20 years. And he says, when he said, he goes, Ray, he goes, oh my God, I wouldn't have recognized you. I said, I'm old, Bert. I'm old. I said, you look the same. How is that? Well, because he was old ever since I've known him. But it was great to see him. It was great to see him. I still admire the heck out of him. His work still inspires.
So you were, if we go back to your origin, when did you decide that you wanted to do illustration, and did you always wanted to do comics at the same time? Were you like, or did you think?
I started off as a kid, like any other kid. I started off young, copying from comic books and comic strips, and I never really thought I'd be good enough to do anything like that. But when people start making a fuss about your art in the grammar school, even though you know your stuff's not that good, but when they make a fuss about it, then you start thinking, well, maybe. and so I went to a standard public elementary school. I always refer to it as a grammar school. I know it's an elementary school. I'm in education, but I still use the word grammar school. I don't know why people said it when I was young, but that's what they refer to it as. And at high school, I went to a slightly prestigious high school in Jersey City called St. Peter's Prep, and it's a college prep school. So I got a really great education. And toward the end of it, I thought, okay, I think I'm educated enough. I'd like to try art. But they had very little art as far like art programs at the high school, like nothing. So I especially wasn't sure that I could do it. So I stupidly applied to Syracuse University for art and for Cornell. And I got turned down by both, though Syracuse said, reapply as general education. You can get in, just you can't get in as an art major because you're not good enough yet. However, it meant waiting half a year. And I was concerned that if I waited half a year, I just would never do it. So instead, I applied to a local school, Kane University, Kane College back then, now university. And I just figured, well, I'll try art. And also maybe after half a year, I'll reapply and go to Syracuse. I don't know. But I get comfortable. Once I get comfortable, I don't really want to change. And so when I was there, I lived in the dorms. One semester studying just a couple of art classes. And the impact on me was, first of all, I was not the worst in the class. Okay, so that helped. Okay. Second thing was, I liked it so much that I decided whether or not I ever make a living at this, I want to keep studying it. Basically, that was just it. I just wanted to do it. And you're young. Why the hell not? And so I continued. I did do a little freelance while I was in college because I was ambitious. I got a little work here and there, not enough to quit. I would have if I brought sample pages to DC Comics at one time. I got a really nice interview with Vince Colletta, and he gave me like some advice and everything. Of course, I wasn't ready. I went to Gold Key Comics, and again, they gave me some nice advice. Even gave me some free paper, and showed me some art, some great some stuff by Al Williamson, Flash Gordon comics that he was doing back then.
Wow.
Oh, double sized, gigantic, amazing to see its stuff. And I saw some of the painted covers. When I saw the painted covers, I looked at that and I thought, well, that'll never happen. I mean, I could never want to do that, ever, Well, the covers Gold Key put out, it's just like paperback quality. No way in heck would I be able to do anything like that. Anyway, so I started doing freelance while I was in college, not enough to quit college, which was
what kind of freelance were you doing?
Anything. I did some stuff for some men's magazines that I will not name. I did some. I started getting some, thanks to some of my teachers. They would recommend me for a little job that they didn't have time for. I mean, isn't that nice? And one of the art directors that came to our portfolio class wound up, actually two of them, wound up hiring me, to do some stuff. Didn't pay great, but it paid a lot more than my rent. Rents were cheap back in those days, like in 1979, 80, 81. But we were ambitious. The group I hung out with, we rented a commercial space before I graduated college. Which sounds crazy, right?
How did you dig up the work? Did you through the references of your teachers?
You're just well, those things that way, but most of the work we did the cold calling stuff. We looked up, you got the only way to do it. This is what my teachers told me: go into a store that sells magazines and books and things like that. Pick one up that has artwork in it. See if it's anything at all like what you can do, and then look and see if it's got a phone number, or something, or name of it, the information. Write it down. Then someone's going to say, "Hey, put that magazine down, kid." But basically write down the information, and cold call. Set up for an interview or for an address to mail your stuff to. But and I can't count how many times I dropped off our portfolio in Manhattan, mailed out samples, and back then there were no color copies. There was none of this kind of thing, and it wouldn't bear no fruit whatsoever. But I did good work here and there, and when I graduated, the work dried up almost immediately. The little that I was getting, and a friend, one of my studio mates who knew that I could technically do storyboards. I had just a few samples I did for my portfolio that were for nothing. I just made them up. had this. He says, "Why don't you call up Continuity Associates in New York?" And I'm like, "Are you kidding me?" He goes, "Yeah, but bring your illustration stuff too. Maybe you impress them." I'm like, "You're crazy." But my bank account was kind of dry, so I made the cold call, and it's hilarious. But I don't know if it was Christine who answered, Christine Adams, or if it was what was her name? How could I forget her name? Ellen, I think. Said, why are you calling? I said, because, I'm asking, but how did you know? I mean, how did I know what? It turns out someone was on vacation and they figured someone had leaked some information or something.
Oh, wow.
And there's something underhanded going on. I'm like, I don't know what the heck these people are talking about. And I thought, my God, what a suspicious world I'm entering to. But I met with, I went in, showed my work to Christine. She called over Neil. I had this incredible moment of shaking hands with Neil and him saying Neil Adams and me saying Ray Lago, which is just like totally like, like we're seriously, it's like, it's like Superman meeting Underdog or something. It was just ridiculous. But he was very nice and complimentary, and I got hired. Now I was there for about 5 months. I learned a lot of stuff, but I made like very little money. But I enjoyed learning. But when because I was doing advertising stuff, they were starting to do comic stuff, and I got to see Corey Adams coloring Bucky O'Hare by Michael Golden. I got to see Frank. Was it Frankenstein? No, Freak Show pages by Bernie Wrightson. I got to see all kinds of stuff that Continuity Publishing might have a hand in. But I was making like no money. Nice place. I liked it. A little crazy, but it was, kind of amazingly cool to even be there at my age, 21. But I wasn't making enough money, and I started getting calls from those clients that had stopped hiring me. And I kind of had no choice. I tried to do both at the same time. And even at 21, you need sleep eventually. So my roommates later on said they were taking bets when I was going to crack. So I gave them, seriously, that's what they told me. I was having pizza for breakfast. You know what I mean? I was up all 24 hours all the time like a nut. But you can do that when you're 21, 22 years old.
What year was this?
81.
Okay.
Fall of 81,
right.
I think fall of 81. I think so. Anyway, so I felt bad. I felt bad leaving there. I really did feel bad leaving there because I know it was amazing to be there. But unlike a lot of other people, I noticed how Neil could be a little much. But I like Neil. We got along fine. He was generous with me. We had some good conversations. And I appreciate the opportunity. But then I went to freelancing, and other things came up. By the way, I'm always like, if work doesn't come in, I look for something else.
Ray, I was gonna ask a question right there. What led you to leaving? Was it just you needed to make more money?
Oh yeah, I needed to make more money. And also, I didn't want to turn down work because I already was told you turn it down even for the best of reasons. They'll understand, but they also put you at the bottom of the list because they need someone who's there for them. I understand it's just business. It's not personal. So that was it. Also, I wasn't working on comics or anything. I think if I was working on comics, even at the little money I was making, I would have stayed. But since I wasn't working on comics, advertising art, which is fine, but you don't have the same emotional attachment as you do to something that's kind of editorial.
Oh, yeah. What kind of jobs were you doing there?
Oh, well, we worked as a team, so I didn't get to do one thing. But basically, Neil would throw things at me that I know he didn't want to draw. And other people, because I was the new kid, would get stuff that people didn't want to draw, like labels on products, like on can of soda, Ruffles potato chips. And I had a different mindset. I remember we finished this Ruffles potato chips or Archway cookies, one of those two. And then it came back for more panels or some changes. And everyone was so happy that the work came back. And me, I wasn't happy at all. The idea of revisiting this project to me was like, why are we doing this again? But I did get to help out Neil on a couple of like movie poster things, just some airbrush backgrounds and a few little minor things, but just to be part of a couple of small movie poster things. It was kind of fun. Again, it was fun. I got to see amazing originals. A lot of his Tarzan originals were there. And that was awesome.
Do you happen to remember the titles of any of those movies? Like if we look at the IMDb,
one of them is something, and chess boxing, Mr. Chess Boxing, the Challenge of Chess Boxing, something. You'll see Neil Adams guys battling each other, and they'll be on a chessboard kind of thing. I did the chessboard.
Fantastic.
I got the minor stuff. But it was, and another, I forget the name of the other one. The other one involved a hand with bullets in it, wearing like one of those kind of leather band with sharp studs on it. But Neil wanted it to be very exaggerated perspective. And I did the initial work on it. Neil did the finishing. You know, I did some airbrushing on it. But again, I never really liked airbrush. But I was a new kid. They stuck me doing that stuff. You know.
So had you used an airbrush before that, or did they show
Yeah,
you?
I used airbrush on backgrounds and here little effects, but I've never liked, doing airbrush.
A lot of work, cutting all those friskets and everything.
Yeah. I just don't like the effort of it, but I did it on a lot of stuff way back when. But I was never an airbrush artist. I don't think one or two pieces. One was okay. The other one really was bad. Even recently, I did a gift for one of my nephews that I did some airbrush work on, and I was like, why did I do that? I'm really, no. The more, and I don't know you guys' experience, but I relied on mixed media, all kinds of stuff. Like I used watercolor, I used Dr. Martin's dyes. Yeah, when was the last time you heard that? Dr. Martin's dyes, colored inks, markers, color pencil, pastel, acrylic, gouache, everything to create an image. Once I got better at painting, I really didn't want to use any of that other stuff. Just like, why would I subject myself to doing? But I knew you get a certain look. But is there a way around, to create a similar look? Where I don't have to break out hardware. So that's just me. And I'm used to it. I spoil myself, but I kind of think, you should. But again, before I could paint well enough, no. I relied on every trick in the book.
Ray, what about other kinds of cartoonist tools like a zipatone and dual shade and stuff like that?
In college, I again, because I was ambitious, even though I didn't know what I was doing, I guess I talked the college newspaper into letting me run it's a weekly paper, a full page comic story. So I did like a weekly full page thing, which I wrote, penciled, lettered, inked, and I put zipatone all over it. And you realize the first thing I did, I was using like quill pens, which they were more like lettering pens. I don't know what I was doing. So try doing a straight line with a lettering pen against a ruler, black ink everywhere, And I didn't have any whiteout or whitewash, whatever. I'm using white tape and paper and gluing everything down. It was just nuts. But I got better. And then I discovered the rapidograph. This was like sophomore or junior year, maybe sophomore year. And I discovered the rapidograph. So I was using it like crazy. Then I saw it print, and I was like, oh, my God, just a whole bunch of thin lines. You can barely see them. So I realized what a traditional pen will do for you naturally. Mechanical pen will not. So I had to I didn't stop using them, but I had to basically now fake that kind of extra thickness and curve and everything. But that was a lot of fun. It's like self-torture, but I just got such a kick out of seeing my work in print. It was highly educational.
What was the comic? What was the?
I did a series I just created a guy. I think his name was Dave Hunter, I think. And it just on campus, I had sort of a murder take place every Halloween. And I basically had like 6 weeks up to, or 5 weeks up to Halloween, one chapter per week. The second time I went in wash tones and had the first time I had the character and his girlfriend dressed up as Batman and Batgirl. The second time they were dressed as the Shadow and Margot Lane. The stuff's awful, but I had such a great time doing it, I had such a great time. And I still have those originals. Believe me, no one wants to buy those things.
So you were doing this after you did the stuff at
This is when I was in college.
Oh, okay.
Fun. And it was really vital that I didn't realize it at the time, but seeing the work in print and seeing where what you're doing doesn't effectively communicate the image the way you think it does is really important for all things, but especially for black and white, especially for line.
How did those washes come out when you saw it in the paper the next couple of days?
The trouble with that was talking about they had to do them in halftones. I did have to be a little more interactive with the place that did all the negative shooting and the print. So I actually had to go there and make sure they were doing what I wanted. And I'm no expert, but I learned a lot in there too.
Yeah.
Just being there. I never seen, galleys and all that kind of stuff. It was, again, college was a great education that way. I mean, being an apprentice to, Al Williamson might have been better, but, being, doing, this kind of thing. And it was fun. I gotta tell you, it was fun. And it wasn't, I kept my course load low, which is why I wanted to stay an extra year in order to get my degree, because I wasn't concerned about getting a degree. But then after a certain point, I realized I might need the degree in the future sometime. So I stayed an extra year so I was able to get my degree. Thank goodness. Otherwise, I wouldn't be able to teach. Not at least not at FIT.
Yeah.
Private schools, yeah, but not at state affiliated, schools like SUNY.
Yeah. I mean, I think the benefit of being, when you're young, of being able to learn and being paid to learn is really golden, because and if you get somebody like Neil, or you get somebody who's established, who's going to give you a little bit of their time, give you, if you're open to absorbing ideas, techniques, because you might have, I would always tell the students, it's like, you may learn something or see something that right now you go, well, that doesn't really appeal to me. I don't really want to do that. I don't like that. And then you might find 20 years later, like, oh, that thing. Yeah. Now I can use that. No, yeah, that makes sense to me now. So when you were working at Continuity and then you left and then you started doing your own client work, were you still mostly doing like watercolor and things like, did you ever switch to
mixed media? It was mixed media, color, and a lot of black and white work. And again, anything that came my way, all kinds of odd. I only ran like a couple of ads in RSVP, if you remember that particular low rent, and like promotional annual, Illustrators annual. So you would just now and then get a client that kept you busy for a while, like Reader's Digest. They had a series of music books. And so 2 years in a row for a certain number of months, I was getting all these black and white illustrations to do, and for which they needed a second color, like done on an overlay, an acetate overlay with airbrush and masking out and all that kind of thing, which I'd experienced before, right? So, and I'd done overlays before for another pen and ink job a few years before that. And that was, I got a cop. I posted a few of those things a few years ago on Facebook. I wasn't the only illustrator. They needed way too much art to just hire me. But it was, again, all that stuff was fun. And I did still wind up doing some storyboarding and animatics and everything. Once at Gray Advertising for a short spell, and once with my own agent for a while, having some of my buddies help me out. But it was more like, I need some work. What can I do to make up for the fact that illustration work isn't coming in? Mm-hmm. So I also wound up working at NBC by accident, looking for work, called the wrong number, go to NBC, realized that, this is a graphics department. And I made interviews for two places. One of them, nice little interview, walked out. The other one offered me a job. And I said, well, let me think about it. I get home to my buddies, and they're like, "Are you out of your mind? Take it. Take the job. You can always quit." I'm like, "Okay." Like, I quit Neil, right? So I could quit NBC. Anyway, so I was there for like 2 years. I did over-the-shoulder graphics. Nice. I used my art skills and learned some others to do quick art, thanks to a guy named John Brainerd. Then they had a thing called Quantel Paint Box, which is sort of, it's not directly the predecessor of the Mac, but it's sort of like the Mac. Sure. So I wound up learning computer stuff. So when I actually got on a computer eventually, my learning curve was, better than average, because I had actually used a similar thing. Mm-hmm. Actually, I kind of like the paint box better even today, but decades later. But that was a great source of income. I was there at NBC for 2 years. Then I quit to do illustration again. But I would get calls from people who used to work at NBC who were looking for someone who knew not that many knew how to do that stuff. I get calls, and I'd do some freelance for McNeil-Lehrer NewsHour, Channel 13. I'm showing my age by calling it the McNeil-Lehrer NewsHour rather than the NewsHour. And they were really nice. I'd go there, work for them, get paid on a daily basis, and CBS Sports, a bunch of different things. That phone calls that would come in from, from before, no different than being a freelance, illustrator, where you get a call out of the blue from a client years ago, or a client that another client recommended. So that became a thing. I was actually using a 4-print paint box just as the Mac was coming out. And I was freelancing, and then they offered me a full-time job. I didn't really want a full-time. They were doing an evening shift. I was doing evening part-time, again, through a guy who worked at ABC, where I did paint box work. And so I took the job, and they paid me well for the time, really well. And they treated me like gold. They treated me so well. They pampered me. And then I had to quit because I got a chance to work on a comic book story for Marvel. And I felt all of 8 years old when I basically went to meet the guy to tell him that I'm leaving. And he wanted to know, oh, what's going, because they want to know, do I need more money? I go, no, I this project I want to work on. Go, what's the project? And I explained what it was. And he goes, I felt like an 8-year-old kid saying I want to leave there to work on a comic book.
To join the circus.
Go ahead, join the circus.
Marvel's short run Open Space series.
Oh wow!
Kurt Busiek was my editor. He was an editor back then. He wasn't Kurt Busiek. He was Kurt Busiek. It was thanks to Carol Kalish, who I don't know if any of you guys know Carol, but she was just amazing, great woman. And that was, and this sounds funny, and you guys can see that I can talk. A buddy of mine named Mark Wayne Harris is a writer who was doing work for Blackthorn Publishing, who was a friend of Dennis Francis, who used to work at Continuity. You see the whole connections thing, right? He was pitching something. He had met Daniel O'Neill, and at one point at DC, and Daniel O'Neill at one point contacted him about would he like to write Batman. He had contacted a bunch of young upstarts, and so he couldn't believe his luck. He took him out to lunch, the whole thing. Daniel takes him out to lunch, so he's very excited. And he works on this thing. And he asked me would I be interested in creating a few samples, because he knew I was interested in doing some comic stuff. Inspired a lot by Epic magazine that had full color work in it. Because I knew I couldn't do a monthly comic book, but special project thing maybe. So I did whip up some pages. Whip up sounds fast. It was not that fast. And we showed it to Denny O'Neill. It was nice meeting him. But he said he would think about it, whatever. Wound up never doing it. But the pages wound up being shown to David Campiti's Innovation. They were in New Jersey for some trade show. Wow. They wanted to hire me to do something. I had some color copies were a brand new thing, but I sent them some color copies. They're like $5 a piece, so I spent a lot of money and for the time. And we're going to do something in the future. Paul Curtis, who later on was working at Marvel for Carol Kalish, was his assistant editor or something, and we had talked on the phone. So we're chatting, and Paul says to me, "Oh, I was just going to meet. I don't drive, so I was going to meet. This was in Morristown, New Jersey. I had a commercial space down in Soho, and we were meeting in Newark, and Mark was going to drive me. And Mark calls to make sure I'm on my way. And I said, oh, yeah. And he goes, are you bringing your portfolio, your art? I'm like, no, they've already seen that stuff. No, they'd like to see the originals. Bring the originals. I wasn't not going to bring the originals. Anyway, but I said, okay. So I brought the originals, and it's a good thing I did. At one point, Carol Kalish is walking by. I don't know who she is. And Paul Curtis says, oh, don't look now, but Marvel's walking by. I'm like, And she says, oh, hi, Paul, and keeps walking. And he called her back and showed her my work. She was impressed. She gave me a business card, said, call me next week. I said, okay. No, actually, she says, do you like science fiction? I said, of course I like science fiction. And she said, call me next week. Next week I came in, and I called her. And the following week I came in, met with her and Kurt Busiek. And I got hired to work on my first comic story for Open Space. And it's all kind of thanks to Mark telling me to bring that portfolio, basically. Wow. And Paul Curtis stopping Carol, and making her come back, even though, they wanted me for innovation. That didn't stop him from being a great guy and thinking, hey, maybe Marvel will have something for him. So two really nice guys, Mark Wayne Harris, Paul Curtis.
What do you remember what that portfolio was? What kind of art you were showing?
Oh well, really, it was just those a bunch of Batman samples that I had done for DC. Really, I don't remember. There must have been something else in there, but it wasn't a lot. It wasn't a lot of stuff. So and yeah, I still have those pages too, and they're not very good. They're pretty terrible. I'm serious. If they were really good, I would have already sold them. Because I do sell my work. I don't hoard my own art. I have no interest in looking at my work, so I basically, I sell most of what I do.
Wow.
Hey,
I only regret, Jamar, because you've got the magic stuff. I only regret having sold the magic stuff, because when I sold the Magic the Gathering stuff, there just was not an art collectorship for it yet.
Right.
And now, wow, yeah.
Yeah, I basically sold. I remember one time I sold like 4 or 5 pieces that today, for the amount that I'd get for one of them, and maybe not even that, they go for a lot more money now. So
I'll put those on the screen in a second.
Sure, no, whatever.
I don't want to go out of order, but I have a question from the chat for you, Ray. And we're stacking questions like pancakes, but we'll get to them. But this is a good one because we're talking about New York. Our good buddy Kirk's Pencils at YouTube says, Ray, how was life as a comic book artist in New York at that time? Like, besides just getting gigs, like what, just being in the suit?
It was getting gigs, and it was working night and day. The thing is, I've never worked on a monthly thing. It was always like anthologies. Open Space was an anthology. There was some time. I was in the first issue, and then the second issue and the fourth issue. It was round the clock work. Yeah. And since I like to use reference, I was snapping embarrassing pictures of my friends in every pose, and myself, using a Polaroid camera half the time, and other times running with film to a photomat or something and getting it, done overnight. And I'd always do my layouts out of my head, but then I would get whatever reference possible. And it was mostly whoever was around. And sometimes it was just me in a bathrobe or underwear or something. Other times it was, I liked better when I was imposing on friends. But it was just a lot of, comics is the most time-intensive medium there is. It just eats up your life. But it's like, you guys know, it's like making your own little movie in a way. It's just amazing. There's a lot of satisfaction when you complete it, but it's a lot of work, But the time, it was really the late 80s into the early 90s. And like I said before, one thing led to another thing, led to another thing. Open Space led to, there was going to be an Open Space graphic novel that I had done layouts for, because the series wasn't doing that well, so they're going to close it off with a graphic novel, 64-pager, that would close off the important stories. And I was going to be the artist on the whole thing, which was amazing. But then Carol Kalish passed away, and it was really her project, so a lot of those things got cut. I got paid for everything I did, but it made me available for. Kurt mentioned that Mark McLaurin needed someone to do a Hellraiser thing, so I wanted doing some Hellraiser. I wound up doing, believe it or not, Hook. Remember the Marvel movie adaptation of Hook? I handled the 3 pages for that rush job. For Fabian Nicieza.
Wow.
Yeah. And at the time, Kurt told me I was the only one over there who could pronounce his name. So, yeah. And, but anyway, and then from that stuff came trading cards through Tom Brevoort and Glenn Greenberg. And then covers of Dark Horse, and everything just kept piling up. It was great. It was great, but it was like, it was a little crazy at one point because I'm not fast, so a little overwhelming occasionally.
Well, time will let people think that there was this very romantic era in the 80s in New York, but it sounds like you were busy drawing. You were running the streets with Keith Haring. You're drawing.
The Pop Shop was right around the corner, by the way. It was on the other side, by the Puck Building. Yeah, we were right here. We were on Broadway and Houston. Mm-hmm. So that we used to go up to the roof and look down at everything. It was great. We're on the 12th floor, which is the top floor. It was a lot of fun. That's actually Dennis Francis from Continuity, and I wound up sharing a studio with some other people down in Soho. First on the west side on 31st Street or 30th Street, and then down in Soho for a while. I always loved having a separate commercial space. I couldn't do that now. Yeah. I really couldn't. But at the time it was great. And that area, it was not the heyday really of the time. Heyday was like maybe a decade before, but it was still great. I loved it. You know,
Well,
really
people would kill for that time now. I mean, a lot of the old guys by that time, the classic guys, the Ken Rileys and people like that, it's sort of gone into the West.
Actually, one of the in the chat, Derek J. Dent was one of the guys that I shared studios with.
Oh, great.
Great time.
Yeah. Yeah. Because by the 80s, a lot of guys the older guys started going into the Western art. They started getting out of doing the paperbacks and things like that. So, so were you, did you have an agent or were you getting all this yourself?
Well, in comic stuff, there was no point for an agent. Right. With illustration, yeah, I would sometimes have an agent. It wouldn't last too long because if nothing was coming my way, I just went and got something somewhere else, and then I wasn't available for what the agent was going to get from me. Right. I remember one time that someone had reached out to me, some agency, and I was busy. I reached out to them, and there was some sort of October crash at one point. I forget, it was the late 1980s. What was it? Yeah, late 1980s, and it was at the time it was very big. And after that, you know, they weren't hiring. In fact, they were doing per diem, even with graphic designers. They didn't want them on staff anymore. You know, they were hiring freelancers. But yeah, the illustration thing dried up. But I would always do some TV work and bounce back and forth. The thing about comics is it did not pay as well as the illustration, but the steadiness of the work more than made up for it. And then once I got to do more full color stuff, it came closer to illustration prices. And again, it was very steady. It was nonstop, actually, overlapping deadlines. It was pretty crazy. The same stuff you guys have been through. You know, just tons of work. But again, it's impossible to complain. I was young and I really enjoyed it. I can still pull an all-nighter and even a couple all-nighters. But, you know, it's not the same as when you're, you know, like, I don't know, late 20s, early 30s, you know, where you just, like, you know, it's just
you're not excited to do it.
Oh, yeah. Well, at one point I was renting, while I was doing Hook, I wound up getting reacquainted with Rick Bryant, who's, of course, a legendary character. And he's an artist. It's terrific. He did terrific work. But most people remember him in the industry as a character because he's a character. He's quite a character. I wound up, after meeting him, myself and a few friends wound up subletting his apartment as a studio. It was an illegal sublet. I could say that now, many, many years later. A lot of artists came in and out of there, hung out there because of Rick and because I was going to conventions and meeting people. And those years there were like kind of amazing, you know, just because it was a small place, but Mark Teixeira was part of it. My old friend from college, Don Wimmer, who's the cartoonist on Rose's Rose, who shared many studios with me. Jordan Raskin, if you remember Jordan Raskin, who worked for Dark Horse on Predator and then Ripclaw for Image. Rick was around some of the time. Guys like Mark Beecham and Mike Baer came by and hung out and worked. And it was like Doug Alexander Gregory, if you guys know him. Just, you know, people would come by, hang out and work. Tony Salmons was, again, another character, but amazing artist, something of a genius, would be there periodically. And one time when I was working on the Hellraiser stuff there, he and Mark Beecham, maybe Mike Baer was there, I don't know, and Rick Bryant was there. They would bitch about the industry so much. The industry that I was so happy to be in, but they'd been in it for a while, right? So they would just complain. And I'm sure all the complaints were valid. I came from the commercial art world where you're not guaranteed a job after the job you just completed. You may get another job from them a year from now, 3 years from now, 20 years from now, or never. But, you know, they complained a lot. And at one point, Tony said, "Oh, Ray over there, he'd practically pay Marvel to do what he's doing." And I looked at him and go, you know, almost. I just can't afford to, but I would otherwise because I loved what I was doing. Yeah, Hellraiser, right there. There you go. There's the one for Marvel.
I'm gonna go through some of these Hellraiser slides while you talk.
Sure. Yeah, no, it was. And by the way, the Hellraiser thing, Hunger, which is a character created by Epic Marvel for, you know, Clive Barker. I have a very slim, okay, use the word skinny, youngest brother, tall and skinny. He posed for hunger. I put him under lamp lights and just took tons of pictures, you know, and it was so much fun. And he's throughout the whole book, basically. And he's quite an actor, so he put on all kinds of great expressions and everything. It was so much fun. But again, hours and hours and hours. And I stuck in like my whole family practically in this story, the Hellraiser story. Almost every victim is I'm not kidding. It's like, you know, it's not always consistent because I didn't always have the family member to pose, and sometimes you can go, oh, that face doesn't look like the girl before. But a friend right there who's playing the priest, you know, you can keep going if you can. Yep. I wish I knew her. No, that's just swipe. You know?
Hello.
I wish.
So how much when you're doing this type of job, how much time goes into the preparation of like choosing your models, figuring out
whatever model's handy? But obviously, if I know someone who fits the bill, you know, I'll call them up. But I had friends of mine from church who were young, part of a youth group that I used to moderate, who are in this, in that page. And my youngest brother, I have my brother who's actually my landlord right now, who lives upstairs. I read from him, you know, and my sister posed for part of it. A friend of the family posed for the other female, brunette and a blonde. And again, it's laid out of my head, and then, you know, get as much reference as possible, including in this particular case, this and Ivanhoe. I put whatever clothing I could on them, so they have something that I could work from. Like they're not in t-shirts when they're posing for these things. I actually put some clothing on them, so I'd have wrinkles and such.
Yeah, I talked to Charles, the late illustrator Charles Santori, about his process, and that's what he did. He would draw, he would do his layouts, then he would get reference, and then he would apply the reference to his work, as opposed to, you know, shooting the reference or finding the reference and then being a slave to the reference.
Yeah.
And he never wanted to be a slave to his reference, so he would lay out a job, and then he would use the information from sourcing his, you know, his photos, models, whatever. So he didn't feel like he had to like, well, I can only find a picture of a guy with his arm like that, so that's what I'm going to use, you know. And on top of, you know, working as an illustrator, you know, it's different when you start working in continuity and telling a story. It's also different from doing storyboards, because storyboards for a commercial are not necessarily always trying to tell a story. So how did you develop your, you know, your idea or your voice for doing storytelling and continuity?
Well, you know, the scripts that I was working from were fairly full. This one by Lorene Haynes. She passed away. She was Dave Dorman's wife, and she was an illustrator herself. Basically, the panels were fairly well described, but the angles and stuff, I mean, that's just from, I hate to say it, just admiring a lot of comics art and studying comics art yourself. I mean, you know, I've got the Will Eisner book, you know, I've got, you know, and just, I don't know, looking at what other artists did, and just, you know, like a lot of it's through osmosis, I guess, just exposed to a lot of stuff. I mean, I think some stories I've done are better told than others. I am the kind of artist that in my layouts, I would always mark in where the word balloons and the captions should go. Right. I would estimate where I thought how big they were based on the script. If they change the script, that's a different story. But I plan it out quite a bit. Because I see the whole thing. The whole page is a composition, but every panel is a composition. And so, you know, right from the beginning, I was thinking in those terms.
This is great stuff.
It's beautiful.
So when you were thinking about storytelling, were there certain artists that you looked at to try to learn from, since you didn't really go to school to, you know, study how to be a cartoonist? So I'm always interested, like, who were the key artists that gave you an idea about storytelling?
I wish I could say it was just a handful, but I collected almost anything that was good. So from Joe Kubert to Neil Adams, Bernie Wrightson, Michael Kaluta, Smith, Steranko, who tell similarly. Eisner, of course, just great. A lot of different things. Things stick in your head, and you may not remember where you saw it first. You think it's yours. You came up with it, but it's something you may have seen before. But again, it does help that the script would be full. Like, for example, on the last page there, the dark panels in the hand coming up, that's in the script, making it look lively and everything, like which angle I decide the survivor, at least for now, to, come up is up to me. But, pretty much when you read a script, you kind of know what you want, what should be in each panel. I don't know. I thumbnail out the ideas first on the actual script, because back then we always had paper scripts. So I would read it and I'd start thumbnailing right on the script, little like what scenes. And then when I thought of each page, how big should this panel be compared to this one? But it was full script, and that, to me, dictated a lot of it. With the color thing, I had to, kind of decide, like the colors get a little more neon when they're in this sort of limbo land. The one where the girl gets her heart ripped out, which gets kind of cartoony. I actually had to get a little cartoonier for that, the bloody stuff, because real, it would just look messy. So I got a little more stylized. But see, it gets more blue, just blue with black all around it. You just shift things. You see, I had copies of stuff in heavy metal. I'd seen so many different artists who've done painted work. I mean, it hadn't boomed as much in American comics, but I'd seen stuff done in Europe. And you see how they would shift color. The only person I knew prior to doing this kind of stuff who was painting comics was I'd met George Pratt, and he was working on Enemy Ace. And so I kind of looked at what he was doing. I met Alex Ross, and I got to know each other a little bit later. But I guess when we're doing Open Space, actually, he wound up doing an issue, which I'm sure you guys know was printed after the fact as a sort of supplement in Wizard magazine. And of course, I love what he did in Marvels. But this is done before. This, I think, was done like right at the time when he was just starting to do Marvel, like when they were, because it went through. Initially, it came to Mark McLaurin, and it was going to be a different thing. It wasn't going to be 4 issues. It was going to be 6 issues. There's a whole story behind that I'll tell you one of these days. But I got to see some of his preliminary work, and I was impressed. I didn't really, know the guy. I was very impressed by his work. So
we've got a question. We've got a question here relating to some of the work we just saw. Eternity Forever asks from YouTube, how do you determine the lighting for a scene? Is that in the script?
Sometimes, but sometimes it's just, if something's like, if it's a dark scene because it has to be dark, then you got to decide how are you going to light it so it's still dark and yet it's, you could still see it. The bright light thing that was happening in the middle part of the story, that was another way to separate it from the rest of the story. But there's scenes in there where they're well lit, left, right, top, bottom, I do try to, what is the scene and where's the light source naturally in the scene? But I kind of think of that when I'm just sketching it well before painting it. And so if I do shoot models, which I do when I can, not as much now, but I did when I could, I would be following my sketch and I'd make sure that it was as consistent as I could do, and still get it done,
Could you talk about your process, like getting from the sketch to that finished piece?
I was painting on, hear me kvetch, Strathmore 3-ply Bristol used to be like the best watercolor surface, never meant to be used for watercolor. And then at one point, and I heard this from Representative Strathmore, who came to FIT, who I showed, this is pre-COVID, but still well after their paper tanked, became horrible, unusable. I mentioned that, what happened? You guys, accidentally made like the best watercolor paper ever. And he's like, I don't know, it's not made for watercolor. I can't. And I said, oh yeah. And I pulled out 3 different things: a painting that I did in Bert Silverman's class, a little Annie Fanny page, which when I worked for Playboy, and maybe one of the Hellraiser pages, something like that. And I said, all these are done on 3-ply, plate finish Strathmore. And her jaw dropped. And it's like, but I said, has the company changed hands? He says, yeah, and they doubtless brought in different equipment. It's in the whatchamacallit, the finishing of the paper when they seal it. They use different process because it changed hands. I still remember. Do you remember who told me this? Children's book illustrator. I think Eric Velasquez told me when I went through FIT and through Mark Texera. I'm such a name dropper. Told me that I think it was Greenberg. Is it Irvin Greenberg? A really excellent realist painter, watercolorist. Contacted someone and found some of the old stock and bought $10,000 worth. Like just bought them out.
Wow.
And I'm pretty sure he's passed away and all that stock was not used. Where is it? Great if we can get some of it. Spread it out amongst all of us who love that paper.
It's funny you say that because I remember one of the things that I learned from Al was that if you find something that you like, literally do like that what that artist did. You hoard it, you buy it, because he would say, I'm using this pen point now, but the pen point that I had in like 1967, even if it was the same pen point, was actually better. The metal was better. How they manufactured it was better. So, and I did buy a lot of stuff. I did buy, we would buy Pelican ink. We would buy that stuff. It's easier when you're working than if you're poor. You're the poor starving artisan going, oh, I got to cough up $500 for this, But yeah, Strathmore is crap now. I mean, I use the pad for the strips, the 300 in the pad, but I was originally doing the Judge Parker Sundays on 4-ply, but it was so terrible. So okay, I'll buy the top, and you would take a line and you would ink it, and it would spider. It's just the paper was not, like you said, they would run it through twice, I think. I remember John Romita telling me that. That's why the Marvel and DC paper was so good, because they had them run it again. So, and if you find an old piece of that board and you flick it, you get a piece of new paper and you flick, and you can actually physically hear how different that piece of paper is. So how would that affect your?
Oh no, it had quite an impact. It's called the sizing on the paper.
Yeah.
When I still remember, I thought I just had a bad sheet here and there, and then I got again, name dropping. Thanks to Buzz, I wound up getting like this $100 certificate. Buzz, Aldrin Awe. I got like this $100 certificate at either Dick Blick or Jerry's Art or something. So I ordered. I didn't realize that the paper was no longer useful. I ordered a case of it for like, 150 or whatever. And then I started using it. And what happens, this is how bad the paper is when it's really not meant for water now. Before, it was never meant as a watercolor paper. It just happened to be a great watercolor paper. It's a drawing paper. If you wet it, an indentation forms. Forget about color or paint. If you wet it, puddle with water, an indentation forms. And when it dries, that indentation is still there, like it's been debossed. And it's like, oh, this is only good for pencil now. And ink, but not ink wash. And it just, and I had basically a case of it. And I was like, okay, so, what can you do? I've tried so many other papers. At one point, Charles, a lot of artists have kvetched about this over the years. At one point, Charles Vess recommended the same series, but 4-ply. And so I bought a few sheets and tried them. It's a little better, but when you're putting down layers, the intensity of the color does not build up. So you wind up dry brushing and spattering and doing other things. I found no solution. The only solution is, believe it or not, the 2-ply handles the paint pretty well. The problem is you can't get very wet because you get valleys forming, which you get with any thin paper. but the resistance of the paper is fine. Like it takes it fine. It doesn't just deboss or something like that. What it's done is unfortunately, it does affect, what I can do. And I've tried a lot of other papers, and none of them really are anywhere near as good. I still do some watercolor, pieces. I did some Avengers cards a couple of years ago, and one of them, Squirrel Girl, I decided to do as a watercolor simply because I saw it as a watercolor. The other ones I did acrylic on masonite, on panel, basically. And so I've been doing more acrylic lately. Occasionally I do oil, but for storytelling, I don't really want to do acrylic. And not that I do storytelling very often these days. I haven't done a comic book story in a long time, and I do miss it. But if I did it, I'm not sure what I would do it on, and maybe I'd have to. Well, I've had a little bit more success using acrylic gouache, a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've been playing with that a little bit also.
Was that Holbein? I think was it?
I'm not. I think I just bought. I'd have to get. It's not Holbein. I might have a tube or two of Holbein, but for a particular color, but I'm not sure of the brand.
Yeah, I forget what it is too, because I bought some actually. It's funny, I bought them at Art Center because I was visiting California, visited Art Center, and went in their store, and a lot of the artists there use gouache, and they had this new acrylic gouache, and they had some new colors that were pretty cool, sort of minty, a little bit different.
Well, they're the things. Most of them are slightly opaque, and that it's a help. Well, with watercolor, of course, you're just dealing transparently. But I just know several artists who've managed to use them successfully. So I thought, why not? Yeah, this is me doing watercolor on 4-ply, by the way. So it's not 100%, but yeah, you should click at the stages. When you ask me about stages, this is the perfect one to show.
Oh, right.
I created this for my students during COVID. There's my little trading card size sketch. Cartoon. I do have a tiny toy, but it can't pose like that. So it's a cartooned Psylocke trading card. And I sent a few. I sent them like 4 sketches. This is one they approved. Okay. Yeah, you may want to zoom back out. Yeah. Okay, go to the next one. There's a little color study done that small. That way, if I don't like it, I can do another one. If I do big color studies, then I'll never finish them.
How big is this?
The size of a trading card. I basically outlined it in micron and just put watercoloring gouache on it, regular gouache. Okay, go to the next. They don't see this; they just see the sketch. And by the way, I blow up the sketch so it looks like I did a lot more work. I always no, because it's a trading card size sketch. I enlarge it and then show it to them as like a large layout, and it looks like I did a lot more work. You can go to the next one. So this is my pencil drawing, just as a working drawing, final drawing. Though it turned out I wound up changing it a bit, but this is me. This now I look at reference books and just improve the anatomy, looking at some pictures and stuff. But I didn't have a model. I would love to have had a model for this, but I did not have a model. Okay, that's the drawing of the actual surface, and if you'll notice, the face changed and the attitude changed, got a little more intense. That's a darkened. You can go to a darkened copy. The darkened copy is the one that I actually print out, because once I start watercoloring, I'm going to lose the drawing, and I want to be able to restate it. I was looking. Olivia Munn in X-Men Apocalypse had been Psylocke, and she just had a great attitude in her face, So I did a little touch of that in there. Okay, good. You see that? I print that out so that I see all my edges and lines from when I'm painting, so I can re-put them in there. I just keep a copy of it on the outside. That's my underpainting in burnt sienna, with probably a little touch of black Payne's gray in there somewhere, just so I can see the difference in the values. You can keep going, click, through. You'll see the process. Just a glaze of yellow down. Again, I got my little color plan, and then I start floating in the blue stuff. And I don't care if that's opaque with some gouache in it. I don't care if it floats partially over a face or whatever, because I can lift it out to a degree, and I can paint over it.
That's gorgeous.
And get some darks in there, start playing around, tightening things up, restating stuff. Flesh. Yep. The outfit, start, going in there. More color.
So how long would it take you to do? Because I saw that you did like a lot of Magic the Gathering. So would you work on one piece all the way through, or would you jump around and like?
Well, generally they want to see sketches first, and then they don't need to see all the other stuff. So basically, that's the published card, of course. I show them several sketches. They approve one. I do a little color study for myself. I enlarge the piece, either trace it. Since this is Bristol board, I was able to trace it. If I'm working on illustration or masonite or something like that, then I've got to do like a copy, enlarge my sketch, and then do like a reverse tracing and transfer it down onto the surface. If it's oil, then I'll probably gesso it first. If it's acrylic, sometimes I will, sometimes I won't. And then I'll start, painting. They don't, from the little sketch, they don't see anything till the finish for the most part. Usually, there's some exceptions.
I love it.
Like the Ultraman was, those recent pieces I did was a big exception. The company in Japan wants to see a lot of stages. Fortunately, I do a lot of stages, so I was able to show them the stages.
Can we show the magic cards?
Sure, please.
All right, just give me 1 second.
So how did you get the magic?
My students, you know how many students have asked me that? And I have to tell them, maybe not the way you would get in. And I said, because, I have told people, show them your work, show them your work, show them your work. It actually helped one guy who was many years ago, who came to me at a show, and I looked at his work and I said, put together some color copies and send it to them. And he did, and he got work. So it was amazing. But I basically told them, well, the way I did it, I was in San Diego hanging out with my buddies, Scott Hampton and George Pratt and Chris Muller and Dave Dorman, and an editor from, Magic the Gathering, went over to say hi with them, chat with them. And he saw me and he goes, we've been thinking about contacting you. Would you be interested in doing stuff? And I said, sure. I gave him a card. That's how I got work at Magic the Gathering.
That's great.
It's the best way. That is the best way to get work. Nothing better than them to come up and ask you. That is not the usual way you get work. So this is one of those little sketches, not the size, a little bigger than a trading card, 3x4, something like that, because they print about the size of a priority mail stamp, on the Magic card. So, and yeah, that's the painting.
Wow. Yeah, a lot of people have a hard time working that small, though. Which, if you were doing something digital now, it doesn't really matter because you can blow things up like forever.
Sketching is so much more fun on paper.
Yes.
I've sketched on the computer stuff. There's no comparison. I'm sorry. It'll never be as much fun.
I was having an interesting talk the other day with a friend about this, because there's a lot of things that are important to us in our aesthetics and our tastes and in our process, right? I mean, that was one of the things I was talking to my mentee about this summer. We were talking about inking, and I said, there's all that muscle memory. Like, you have all this muscle memory. What the viscosity of the paint at this stage, what the paper is at this stage. There's all these things that you learn from doing it, that you could only learn by doing it, right? And so, so she wanted to be an inker, and I said, there's like literally hundreds of hours of muscle memory to get your process down. And I take it that you're still not doing digital. You're still mostly traditional.
I'm doing all traditional. I don't, do digital. I did some digital when I worked digitally when I had some of those jobs. Oh, this one's fun because I know I sold this. I should be talking money, but I think I sold it for about $300, and someone on eBay is selling it for $3,000.
Oh,
it's a beautiful piece.
Well, God bless them. It's nice. I like that it's gone up in value. Believe me, I just wish I still had some. But you could tell this cartooning here. You see what I mean? You do have to sometimes cartoon. Obviously, I had shot of an eagle or whatever. That does not look like an eagle. I had some roaring face of a cat or something. But again, it's cartooning, and that's fun. The cartooning, it's nice because I easily go toward photorealistic. I like it when I'm forced to stylize.
That's beautiful.
But here's the doodles. That's what I do. Pen doodles or pencil doodles. Mostly pen doodles because that way I abandon them more quickly. Lots of little pen doodles to come up with compositions.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, this is, I think, probably a copy of the transfer drawing. Well, maybe not. Because, yeah, this one was oil. So everyone's different. Sometimes I'll do like a prelim, like a tight pencil. I think I did one for this one too, but I think I enlarged my sketch and then, yeah, there we go. And that was my final, like sort of my working drawing. And then I transfer that. This one I think was done either on canvas board or illustration board or masonite or something. It was like 9x12. And oh, it's funny how I switched from watercolor to painting in oil for them. There was a new art director and nice guy. He contacted me. And I basically decided I would send him a copy of my art book that had been published at the time. And I mean, normally that's a wise move. And he loved it. But he said, everything here doesn't seem to be done on watercolor. And I go, no, there's oil pieces, whatever. He goes, would you mind doing ours in oil? I was like, the only answer to that is sure, no problem. Yeah. But that means instead of being able to paint one, like once I got the sketch approval, got my reference together and, paint it, I could paint one in a day because they were small. Now I need to work larger because I cannot paint in small in oil. And I'm not super big, but they couldn't be as small as I was doing them. And for a lot of so it would take me 4 days to do oil instead of maybe a day or two doing watercolor. Again, it's not a big deal. And the way I saw it, I'm making a client happy, and I get more practice in oil. So
is that oil and paper?
No, it's on. I guess it's either canvas board or illustration board or possibly a panel. I don't remember. It's been so long.
Ray, did you broker a different rate once you switched to oil, or you kept
No,
watercolor prices?
On the table. That was not on the table, sir. No.
There's a question here about do you save all the sketches and the other steps?
The funny thing is, no one was interested in buying the originals. And I remember Chris Muller, terrific painter, really nice guy. He did a ton of magic cards. I mean, really, he did a ton. There on YouTube somewhere you can find this like a video thing of showing like all his pieces. It's just some beautiful music. It's excellent. He said they just don't pay much, so he didn't sell too many at the time. You'd have to let them go cheap. So they said, but some people want sketches. So I did bring some sketches and a few little color studies, and I sold a bunch of them, but I didn't sell them all. And I brought a few of the final drawings, and like no one was interested in them. Okay. And Captain Sasay is a very popular character, and I really wish I still had that sketch. The Captain Sasay stuff goes for a lot of money. Some of them go for a lot. This is the transfer drawing. I still had that. In fact, I had pinholes in it for my science fiction and fantasy class that I had, and I sold it through the Magic the Gathering Marketplace, a Facebook group, thanks to Mark Aronowitz, who runs it. Great guy. And I made more than twice the money I sold the painting for.
Wow.
So, yeah, that's the painting. So, again, it's nice practice, painting in oil and, rather than watercolor. So I didn't really mind, it just took longer, and I worried about deadlines. That's all. It wasn't so much the money as far as they made the deadlines tighter.
Did you use anything like, any sort of alkyds to help it dry faster or anything?
Whenever I tried doing that, it doesn't work for me. It works for Dave Dorman. I saw the way Dave worked, and I thought, man, I got to try doing that. And I tried doing it, and it didn't help me. It just didn't work for me. I just work using mineral spirits and the paint, and that's it. Sometimes I would put a lamp, not a heat lamp, but let's say 100-watt bulb on a standard, like lamp, and just kind of have about a foot or so away from it, and it sped up the process a bit. And not on these, but on some pieces that had tight deadlines, I'd spray some Kmart varnish, which will dry. But sometimes when you get the painting back then we used to ship the paintings out. They come back with lots of little hairs and ticks and things, stuff all over. You have to try and clean it off. So, look, technology is a real pain in the butt, but it's great having scanners.
I think I saw this in my attic last night.
You saw this in
Yeah,
oh, there's a spider up in your attic. I was thinking about painting. I'm like, really?
No.
I sold this a long time ago. I've only, in my possession, I only have 2 of these that I kept. 1 oil painting and 1 watercolor.
So Ray, when you were doing this work and to get more work like this, do you actively kind of marketplace it? Like you doing it jobs, do you kind of sit on it for a little bit and then start trying to shop it, or like what's the time?
Are you talking about the original, or
what's your timeline of selling?
There's no market for the original at all back then. Now there's a great. I would love if someone who works for Magic the Gathering is on here right now. I'd love to revisit this franchise. I'd love to revisit. This is one of my favorites. Merfolk Trident, Merfolk of the Pearl Trident. I love the Merfolk characters.
I love the composition here.
Thank you.
Yeah, so good.
But my compositions are pretty traditional. But the atmosphere of the painting, I was going for a little bit of a Jeff Jones kind of thing.
Wow.
Do you have any theories about color?
I know more about color now after being a teacher than before, when I just kind of like knee-jerked it based on great art that I loved and want to emulate. And whenever I saw myself repeating myself, I'd flip through art books, trading cards, whatever, turn them upside down, sideways, and go, that color scheme might work on this subject, and just rob it, steal it. This is one that I've kept. This Merfolk right here.
That's cool.
Lovely.
That's a gnarly sword too.
But I just like the way the characters look. I didn't create them, I didn't design them. Just fun. And, but again, I don't play Magic the Gathering. I always feel like a dabbler. I only did a couple of dozen for them over a period of I don't know how many years. But there's so much interest in the art. I mean, and the Magic collectors are just really nice. They got a little competitive camaraderie like artists should have, but as collectors, so that they I don't know, they're very generous, and they love animals. I've done some charity auctions with some of my sketches, and they bid like crazy, knowing that it was going to help some woman take care of her cat or her dog or something. That's what I mean. Oh God, they melt my heart. Them bidding high when I'm putting up a preliminary sketch, and I mentioned they're going to pay it directly to the GoFundMe or something, and they bid it up like crazy, like twice the price that it would go for. There are a lot of nice people out there who collect Magic art. This is really wonderful. That's what Facebook should be for, that kind of stuff.
I find it also interesting that you can do this and do it so well, but you're not necessarily a fan of it, which I think is a very interesting situation, because often as an illustrator, you would get a job and it might not be something that you're particularly interested in, but then you have to solve the problem. So when you were starting out, did images come to you fairly easily, or did you have to really struggle to come up with an idea?
I think at the beginning there was a little bit more of a struggle. I think mostly when I did the first open space story and the second open space story, but with like an idea for a pinup or a cover or something like that. I don't know, just so much stuff that's in your head. I mean, I was looking at comics and other things like that since I was 8 years old. And I remember 8 years old collecting the Avengers and comics like that, and Teen Titans, Legion of Superheroes, DC and Marvel, and the stuff sticks in your head, all the great shots that you saw. And so, without knowing anything about composition, I remember some friend of mine at the college telling me he thought I had a natural sense of composition. I said, I don't think it's anything natural. I think it's just through osmosis. You look at so much great stuff, you draw something, it doesn't look right. What doesn't look right? It needs a rock over here. It needs a shadow over here because the rock's not appropriate. Whatever it is, it doesn't feel weighted properly. And how do you know that? Because other stuff you've looked at was better designed, better composed than what you're doing right now. I usually start drawing it just to make corrections. Drawing is, for me, there are some geniuses out there, and I hate them, who just draw something and boom, it's there. Mobius is probably one of those guys. Never met him. A genius who just probably puts it down. There it is. But for me, I start something and then fix it. Keep fixing it as I go until, okay, that doesn't really suck.
Hey, Ray, this is my favorite part of the show. Are you ready? Are you ready? You're ready. It's lightning round. It's question palooza time, Ray.
Oh, okay.
So what's going to happen is Smiling Steve Conley is going to ask you a battery of questions from the chat.
I'll try and keep it short.
Please keep them brief, but keep them entertaining. Thank you.
All right. Let's do this.
You have the floor.
Before we begin, a nice comment, lovely comment here from Sean Chai on YouTube. Wow, I really love how you used color in the soldier zombie art to draw the eye to the zombie in the group. That was gorgeous and truly masterful. I hope I can use color half that well one day.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sean Chai. Let's start off pretty light. We've got one from James here on YouTube. Do you still have pictures of your modeling days? Of your from posing for
my models? I keep everything. Oh, me posing. Oh my God. Unfortunately, I probably do have them, and I need to burn those things. I really do. I do still have some stuff. I do, and they are embarrassing. So, yeah, I need to cut them up, shred them, something.
Yeah, it's funny because Al had, and I know Frazetta did too. Al had in his studio behind his desk, he built a closet basically for his projector. And in there against the wall, there were literally, it seems like there were thousands of little photographs that he had taken over the years for all of his strips. So there was stuff in there with going all the way back to his old wife, going all the way back to, I think, like Frazetta and stuff. Just tons and tons of, him is Ming the Merciless, like wearing a shower cap so he would get like the bald head. And I heard that Frazetta did the same thing. He had just tons and tons of photos, which it's funny because we don't think about it now because it's so easy to take a photo with your camera, right? But back then it was like, if you took it and it was like, oh, this sucks. Oh, and I take another one. Oh, you go develop the roll of film, and then you hope when you get it back, it looks like what what you want or what you can use. You're like, oh man, I should have had the figure turned a little bit more, or I wish I had it was brighter or whatever.
All the time.
How do you? How important is that stage for you now, and how has that changed from, now because with photography is so cheap and so easy?
Well, the convenience of just being able to use the phone is great, and I have a home printer because I'm not just going to keep looking at my phone all the time. My students have a job due tomorrow, first project due tomorrow. And they're supposed to print out the reference that they found, and they're supposed to do a drawing from it. They're going to be showing me both tomorrow, I hope. Let's see. They're 19 years old, so we'll see how many of them actually get it done like they're supposed to. But I do encourage them to print stuff out because it just helps. Just staring at a phone is great. I will have the phone out while I'm working on stuff, but generally I'm combining lots of different sources when I'm doing something. So even if I'm even just doing a head of something like a Vampirella head for a sketch cover, I might be basing it somewhat on one face that I found, but I'm changing a lot of other stuff. And if I'm using other photos, I can't have them all out at the same time on my phone. I think some people will put it on a laptop and put multiple pictures. That's too much work. I have no room on my drawing table for my laptop. So it's great. The phone is great. The printer is, I hate my printer. I have a horrible printer. Epson, speaking like Strathmore, Epson has redesigned their printers to just be like torture devices. They're terrible. This is the first time I've never had animosity toward an electronic before. When this thing dies, and it's in the process of dying, I've only had this thing for like a year. I'm going to like put it out with the garbage, and I'm going to, well, I can't break it to pieces because the guy who picks that kind of stuff up won't like it, but I want to take a hammer to it. And there's no point in talking to someone at Epson because I will just insult them for like, what the heck? You guys have like the best printers in the world. What's wrong with you people?
Used to.
Yeah.
All right, let's get back to these
All right.
questions.
All right.
I'm sorry.
No.
It's all
good.
age.
It's all good.
So good. All right. Paul Pate on the YouTube. As a teacher, do you notice any generational trends? For example, kids these days can't draw hands. Anything like that?
Well, drawing hands.
It's a loaded question.
No, that's a loaded question. First of all, I really like the kids. I mean, as far as personality, they're very supportive of each other. That part of it is much more so than when I was in college. I mean, really, just terrific. Skill level, for our department, the illustration department, they have to pass a portfolio review to get in, so they'll have some skill. But they're not. A lot of them can't draw that well out of their head, and hands are not that easy. Despite what Neil Adams said. Oh, Neil Adams said, "Oh, hands are easy." I'm like, for you, they're easy. No, he said it to me at continuity. I said, and he says, "Oh, they're easy." And, yeah, for him, they're easy. Hands take a lot of study. It's a lot of hard work. They have a lot of drawing issues, but I don't think it's that different than before, unless they come from the High School of Art and Design or something like that. Mm-hmm. Most of them, this might be the first time, outside of one or two little courses they took, like a pre-college thing. A lot of them are coming, for the first time to really work on their skills. I teach for the associate's degree, so I teach basically drawing, illustrating, painting, but it's all basic skill level stuff. They get a little creative, but they don't really. The upper division, the bachelor's program, is much more portfolio based. I'm more like just trying to get them to draw things correctly and paint things correctly, experiment with color in the spring course, the painting class that I teach. The problem that I find is not whether they can draw hands or something, and you guys know what's coming next. It's they can't stay off the phone. And I don't mean talking on the phone. I mean searching on the phone, playing TikTok videos on the phone, communicating with their friends and posting stuff on the phone when they're supposed to be drawing or painting. It's this constant distraction that their attention spans are very short. I've been teaching for 20 years part-time at FIT. 20. It does not feel like 20. It feels like 10, but it doesn't feel like 20. And they didn't have phones. Neither did I have a cell phone when I started. Yeah. Big difference. They are much more distracted. Yeah.
That's great. Paul, thank you for the question. Trey Dub from YouTube. What is some advice that you would give, or do you give your students that have registered for your class, or just for upcoming artists in general in these times? What's the advice?
Well, in these times, as far as some of the things that Mike mentioned earlier, I did like a little round robin first day of class, asking the students what they'd be interested in doing. Before that, I actually told them a little bit about, a very short thing about, well, I think it was short, about when I was their age, what happened when I got out, that I had to try lots of different stuff. That I loved comics and trading cards and stuff, but I never thought I'd actually be good enough to do it. But I'd try and get as good as I could to do whatever kind of work I could. And I had no idea that I'd do all the various different things that I've done. I always thought I'd probably teach eventually, but that they have to be open to everything, but they have to get their skills down. And I did say they will need digital skills, but there's no substitute for some traditional skills. They improve what's going to become your digital skills later on. And in fact, I have one student right now who's pretty good digitally, and he's actually taking these courses to get better traditionally because he knows it's going to help him digitally. Smart kid. I shouldn't be calling him a kid, but young man. So I emphasize the traditional skills. Also, you can make art and sell it. With digital prints, you better already have a readership, so to speak. I encourage them to get their skills down more than anything else, and that just means don't be distracted. Put tons of hours drawing and painting. It means gluing your butt to the seat. Chat with a friend on the phone who you don't argue with, so you can actually pay attention to what you're doing. Put on some music or an old movie that you really like that you've seen a gazillion times. You don't have to stare at it, whatever it takes. But you got to glue your butt to the seat to improve your skills. It takes hours. You're saying, I think Mike was saying before, how time. It's not 100 hours or whatever. It's years and years and years. You know, I think George Pratt told me something Jeff Jones told him. That's not like 1,000 bad drawings in you. The sooner you get them out of you, the better. And about 100 bad paintings. So.
That's great. Trade Up, thanks for the question. Love that answer. We have Robert Jones from Facebook. Hey, Ray, glad I got to cross your path, however briefly, at Rick's place during my early career in comics. Fun times.
Yeah, absolutely, Rob. I hope everything's good.
And last question, Sean Shai, YouTube. What have been the most exciting changes in the industry over your career, and what are you looking forward to in the future?
Oh my God. Retirement is not a word in, you know, our careers. So I'm not looking forward to any kind of retirement or anything like that. You know, so, you know, I turned 67 last year. Okay. So yeah, I'm the oldest guy in this group. Okay, guys, just so you know. So, you know, respect. You know, I actually don't know. I actually thought about that. I wondered if that question would come up today from you guys, not from, you know, I don't know. There's a lot of stuff I'd like to finish up, or a lot of stuff I'd like to, for example, I did a Grimm's fairy tale that never got published. Now, it's not all painted. It's actually all penciled. It was computer colored. They didn't get enough orders just for Eclipse. And I got all the artwork back. I'd like to finish it up one day and either Kickstarter project it or something like that. I've got those science fiction, that little science fiction duo that I created, that I mentioned to you before, Steve, that I would, you know, like to do something with. Just, you know, because I wrote up a few stories just to complete them. There's, I don't know, there's countless stuff. I mean, you know, you guys probably feel the same way. There's countless stuff that you kind of started or you're never going to run to starting. That, you know, there's not enough hours in the day, done, you know, in the week, the month, the years. I always look forward to getting something. Like I just finished those Ultraman pieces a few months ago. The next time they have a set like that, I hope I'll be part of the group, and I look forward to doing those. I'm working on a Craniac card for the third Craniac set. Here's the first one. This is acrylic wash, actually. Might as well show you.
Hold on, let me give you the screen. Go ahead.
Let's see if I can. Okay. So this is acrylic wash, and this was for their second card set. It's humor, guys, but you know, it's like Wacky Package.
Yeah,
okay?
yeah.
But the fun thing about this one was the original sketch I showed them had the scrubbing bubbles, sculling bubbles popping out, and they didn't want to. I did that with the early one I did, the Captain Craniac, Captain Crunchgroove. They didn't want that. They just wanted it inside, which made it kind of a boring picture. So I just painted it just like that with a white background. And I sent it to them. I was running a little late with it. I sent it to them. They're happy they got it. And that weekend, it just bugged the heck out of me. That was going to sit, that vertical thing was just going to sit on a big white field.
Yeah.
So, but what do you do? What can I do? And then I came up with a gag, you know, and which is basically this kind of skull, dead skull, you know, in the bathroom. And so I painted around it. Fortunately, there was enough paper. And then I submitted it to them, and they loved it. And so, you know, it's one of those, no extra money for it, but it's just because it was incomplete. I mean, you know, when something's not right, it's not right. So unfortunately, they actually had set up the other one to send out the set, but they had time, and they substituted for the one I just sent them. You know, so I'm working on a third one for them on that. Okay, but I'd like to do more superhero cards. I'd love to revisit Magic, and I'd like to do some pet projects. I've been dying to do a Kickstarter, including a Kickstarter from my friend Tony, retired friend Tony Kakinos, who I do a Facebook page and an Instagram page for. I'd like to do a book on his work. I've started putting it together. The book itself is mostly put together, but the writing part is really slowing me down, let alone all the little things that you have to do to actually launch a Kickstarter. I was hoping to already have that thing launched, you know, printed. But that's been a pet project. And it's a great, because I'm learning stuff even as I'm doing it. You know?
Well, it's funny that our good buddy Steve Conley is the king of Kickstarter.
Yeah.
I'll reach out to Steve for advice.
Please do.
I'll impose upon him. I impose very easily. Friends propose for Cenobites and Hellraiser. Family, wear tights.
Well, you survived lightning round, Sean. Thank you so much for that
Yeah,
question.
good job, good
And,
job. So I feel like we have time for one more slideshow. Should we show your Vampy pages?
Sure, whichever one you want. Yeah.
All right.
Vampy is not a slideshow; it's just individual things.
Yeah,
I need to put it in
yeah,
a slideshow
yeah,
form.
yeah.
I would love to revisit Vampy someday. She's one of my favorites. I love drawing.
Let me cue this up here.
I still draw her occasionally just to sell. She always sells. Anytime I draw a Vampy, it sells, and I love drawing her. I hope it shows.
Ray, I have a question for you, and it's not to. I hope you don't take offense to it, but say you do a lot of conventions and appearances and things
Only
like
local. I only do local shows. I don't really travel, hotel, all that kind of stuff. It's not worth it for me. Spending. There was a time in my life where it was a great tax deduction. Going to San Diego, going to Heroes Con. I love doing it, but at a certain point in my life, I no longer needed the tax deduction.
Mm-hmm.
So to go someplace and working hard to make back the money cost me to be there. I also don't hold on to my art. So I don't show up with a lot of art for sale. So I mostly do local shows.
Do you come across people like, say you're in mixed company at a table somewhere and people see your work for the first time because you have your fan base, and some people may confuse your style for Alex Ross?
No, but that would be nice. No one really does that.
I say that with
lots of people meet me who never heard of me. Tons of that. Okay. But now and then I do get people who coming and they remember. And yet again, and Mike and the others, I'm sure you guys get this. Is probably closer to Mike, who's still a bit younger than me, and they'll tell you how much they love this from their childhood. And trading cards and some comics and whatever. Oh my God, you're the one who did the magic cards. I get that with magic cards also.
Oh, I bet, yeah.
And it is really nice. It's great. Yeah, it makes me feel old, but I already feel old. So it's not like I teach 19-year-olds. Okay, yeah. I'm more than 3 times their age, right? So, but that's the closest thing to that. No, I mean, I could see how some people would say like Alex Ross, but I remember there was a time in the 90s where I was getting Predator covers and some covers from Marvel. And I would tell, I think it was Randy Stradley who was calling me. I'd say, when he called me through Predator cover, I'd say, "Oh, Dave Dorman's busy, right?" And he'd go, "Well, actually, yeah." And then I remember Tom Brevoort called me for a Marvel cover. And I said, "Oh, Alex Ross is too tied up right now, right?" And he goes, "Well, actually, yeah." So, but that's okay. I'm very happy to take their hand-me-downs, believe me. And they're both great guys, by the way. It's not like they're not strangers to me.
Right. So yeah, this work is really fantastic. And
I loved painting this, but it was under the gun on this, trying to get the thing done. The editor was like all over me to get this thing finished, because I just finished a different project, another story, the mermaid story, that Skin Tight Orbit thing, which I know we don't have time to show, for NBM. And this and that mermaid story are probably my 2 favorite. And the third would be, I guess, the Hellraiser one of the work that I did. Though Ivanhoe was fun too, but it was a little earlier.
Well, Ray, because I like your face, I'll squeeze in the mermaid.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Give me 1 second.
The mermaid story is written by Elaine Lee, and it was a lot of fun. I think I got the best story in that second volume. It was originally supposed to be published by Tundra. Then they went out of business. I think they paid me for the pencils I had done at that stage. And then Terry Nancier over at NBM, took it over to do Skin Tight Orbit Volume 1 and Volume 2. And I really enjoyed working on this. Craig Hamilton was supposed to do it first, and then he had to bow out. And nice guy that Craig is, he actually sent me some of the stuff he had done, which kind of inspired me to go a little bit more Art Nouveau with it, because Craig was going Art Nouveau.
Oh, yeah, love it.
I even asked them to put a tiny little thank you to Craig at the bottom. They put it in the tiniest type possible. See it, which I'm like, really? But this is the one where I had to figure out where the word balloons were going, and there's mixed narration going on. Sometimes it's a caption, sometimes it's a person. So I had to work it out with Terry. I told him, because I'd read the script many times, I said, we're going to need to put tints or something over some of these boxes. in panels, so that the reader will naturally know where it's coming from, because they're speaking through transmission. They're sometimes the caption is like suddenly, and then other times it's actually someone speaking, the narrator of the story.
Yeah.
There's
a lot going on. Yeah.
That kind of transition from the mermaid shape.
It's painted and watercolor, and it's back and forth. And I had to restate a lot of the lines because I don't work completely transparently. I'm always adding a little bit of white here and there. Some of the stuff is purely transparent. Some of it's got white gouache mixed into it. And so I'd have to reinforce lines back and forth. But I really loved working on this.
It's gorgeous.
But this was done right before the Vampirella story and put me behind schedule in the Vampirella story. Well, that's what I mean. It was coming, Mike Coluto liked the panel in the center. He says, that's good. And I was like, Mike Coluto pays me a compliment. It makes my month.
I love the new Art Nouveau callbacks, even like the thick outline around the character. It's cool.
So what's the project that you're working on now?
It's one of the Crania cards that I'm working on right now. Okay. And I'm working on that book, and I'm working on a few pieces to sell. I don't have any like big project. And with the Craniac thing, I've got to get that done. It's a fun one, because I tend to make the work harder for myself by trying to do something fun with it. So it's a fun one. But after that, I'd like to finish up that book that I'm putting together with that friend of mine and try launching a Kickstarter. If I can get that done, but I do need to finish up some commissions. I'm working on an old standing commission for a really nice guy that was part of a trade thing. I'm going to be repainting that famous first appearance of the Vision on Avengers. And I've owed that for, I don't know how many years, well over a decade, as part of an art trade deal. And he's a really nice guy, very patient, and that I got to get done this month. And I will be sharing that on Facebook and Instagram once it's done.
Wow, that's great. Ray, this is fantastic.
Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you. Oh, Mike, I want to mention, Mike, I still have this.
Wow.
Oh, nice.
The blast.
Might be the first time I met you. I'm not sure. It's the first or second time I met you. Look at this.
Yeah. That was my
I knew where it was. So this happened. I said, I know where that is. And I just pulled it out.
That's crisp.
And I always saw this guy as being sort of a hero monster version of you.
Maybe, yeah, maybe, yeah. I mean, it was sort of like a little bit of like Angel and the Ape, and all those things that I like. I think that's what we do when we do our own thing. We kind of mix in all the things that you want to draw, But yeah, that was the first Ash Can, and then that came out first. So yeah, that was 1995 or 6.
No.
The 90s were really good. The 90s were really good until everything imploded. It was pretty terrific. I mean, these days are good too, but
this has been fantastic. And so also before we go, I have a couple more questions about your teaching load. So how many courses are you teaching at FIT?
Oh, it's part-time. There's no full-time thing.
Right.
And there was a time where I probably would have liked the idea of full-time. It wasn't going to happen. It's just not the way these things work. And I don't like competing for a job. It's like, I hate that. I didn't mind when I was in my 20s, but not now. So I teach generally 2 days a week. Sometimes it's 2 courses, but sometimes it's just 1 course that meets twice a week. I decided to slightly lighten my load this semester because of the things I want to do, to just teach 1 course that meets twice a week, and the spring the same thing. 1 course that meets twice a week. This one's illustration process 1. In the spring, it's painting process 1. I like both courses. So Thursdays and Fridays, or when I'm at FIT. Sometimes I'll come in for some other stuff, faculty related stuff. I love having this nice little spot in New York that I can practically, it's like I've been teaching for 20 years.
Yeah.
It is sort of my home away from home, and I am, and again, the students are great. Anyone who's done teaching, when you're teaching the stuff you love to other people who want to do the same thing, who want to join the club, basically, and they've got a lot of passion. the beginning of the semester, especially the first year, freshmen, basically, they're so excited, they're happy, whatever. Toward the end of the semester, there'll be more stress, and they'll start developing crease lines on their head, like us. There'll be some aging, but I enjoy seeing what they come up with and what they do. It's a lot of fun. And I always liked the idea when I was even a freelance illustrator to have like a part-time job. I never thought that it would be teaching. I thought that I taught that'd be like a full-time thing, but that's my lack of knowledge about the world of teaching in colleges. But it's a great part-time job. FIT's a great place. I only came into it because Dave DeVries asked me if I like to teach there, and I was like, let me think about it. And then I asked him. At one point, I thought, okay, it would be a good idea. I wanted something to put on my application for an apartment. I knew I was going to give up my New York apartment one day, and I thought it would look good to put down, college instructor. So I said, yeah, throw my hat in the ring. And 2 weeks later, I was teaching a class at FIT. Yeah, I was like, it was kind of crazy. But I also feel fortunate. A lot of people want to teach at colleges, a lot of artists I know. And I got in easily, unfairly so. And a lot of people just as qualified or more qualified may not get in. It's like, I like FIT. But like I said, it's a home away from home. I enjoy it. Takes me out of the studio.
Yeah.
Puts me around young people who can be annoying, but most of the time are quite inspiring. And they are funny. They're funny as heck. Not always intentionally, but they're funny as heck. They
So
really are.
this is my last question about school, and then we'll let you go, Pete. It kind of piggybacking off the one question about teaching. How does the modern student take to critique or having, like, say, Friday crits? How are they with the crit wall?
That's a good question. You almost have to ease them into it for those who haven't experienced it, throwing a lot of disclaimers and stuff. I do make it a point to compliment what's good and then point out what needs improvement. If I've had a student in several classes, then I'm going to whatever, they're in for a tough ride. Yeah. And they laugh and everything's great. But most of the time, the students are more sensitive now than when I first started teaching them. Absolutely. But they still need the criticism. But I always let them know what the parts of what they're doing that are correct and good, And so you don't just say what's wrong with it. I mean, I'm not their mother, They say, this is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong. You didn't clean up your bed. No, basically, you point out, this is looking good. This part here, or you made a little mistake on this, maybe you didn't understand. You work with them, and you do have to tell them, that this is part of it, that's what you do there. Otherwise, you can just be home. If you don't want to critique on your work, then take an online course, really, and avoid the teacher. It's too important. The crit is what you're there for, and studio time. But some of them are, a little sensitive, and you got to kind of feel them out a little. You do get to know them to a great degree, actually, as far as their vibe, their personalities. And crits can be fun. They can even be entertaining. You got to poke fun at yourself, though. If you're going to poke fun at students, you got to poke fun at yourself. Yeah. If you don't do that, if you take yourself too seriously as an instructor, they're going to hate you. They're going to not respect you. No, you're there for them. To be quite honest, they're not there for you. Sure, their tuition helps to pay my salary, but you're there for them to help them out, to help them achieve. Well, for me, it's achieve skill one stage in achieving whatever kind of dream that they're shooting for.
Yeah, I think one of the things I learned when I started teaching was that you don't want the critic doesn't. They feel that it's personal, but it's not personal. If you're giving a critique, it's like how to exchange information to help you make your work better. But a lot of artists, I mean, we're all sensitive, right? So you don't want to make it personal. Like if I'm criticizing this job or this piece, I'm not criticizing you as a person, but that's some people have a very hard time with that. They have to, because they're young people. They haven't really probably ever experienced that, because one thing when you're young, you're always the best of your friends. You're the best in class. You're the, grandma puts your picture up on the refrigerator, right? And then you get into the next level where you're one of many who are good. And maybe there's others who are better. And, you try to explain to them like, well, that's the way the world is. Because once you're out of college, somebody will be very critical, and they're not trying to teach you in the way that it is in college. College is like art school is sort of like the last thing where people will, it's very nurturing. The whole point of it is to nurture and make you better. And when you're facing the real world, your editor may not necessarily.
Not at all.
Yeah. And it's hard for young people to know that because they're young.
Guys, we did it. We got to the end. Where's my thing? Hold on a second. I can't find it now.
Oh, they're like, you're going to do one of those things.
Pencils down.
No sound effect, thank God.
Yeah, no sound effects. See, I'm not going to do that to you.
Do they have like Batman kind of sound effects, like man?
No, all they have is applause and boo. And I think there's a slide.
Booze? Oh, no. Stay away from the booze. That's going to hurt people's feelings.
Hilarious.
Well, Ray, thank you so much. You've been a fantastic guest. We've been flashing your Instagram handle all night long. Is there any place else you'd like people to?
Facebook also. I post more on Facebook than Instagram. I try and post on both, but Instagram is actually more of a pain in the butt to post on.
It is. It is.
Facebook is easier.
I was saying that.
But I try and do both.
Yeah. What I really wish Instagram would do, which is what other things do, like when you put it on Facebook, they automatically size it. But in order for you to put stuff on Instagram, you've got to size the thing, which is always like, of every one that I post, like they're always the pain in the ass.
I always have to like add extra, like just black or white, so that I fit the entire image in. Yeah, because with the Instagram page that I have for Tony Kikinos, I posted a lot of men's adventure magazines and Marine Corps Gazette magazine stuff and double page spreads. And I want to show like one important piece of it, and then the second image will be the whole piece. And on Instagram, that means gigantic white on top and bottom. So it fits in the same square shape. It's a pain in the butt, and you need a magnifying glass to see it. So.
And I foolishly was not following you on Instagram. I have corrected that, so I'm excited to see what you post.
Okay, thanks.
Well, Ray, we're going to say goodnight. Thank you so much for hanging out with us. Hang out. We're going to do our outro. This is a thing we do. We will be back. Wait a minute. Next week, there's 1 week I won't be here, but we'll check. You'll be the first to know when we figure out what we're doing next week. Thanks so much, guys. Benedict Cumberbatch told me that we're in the end game. So it would behoove all of us to get ready, Ray. We're going to make sure we wash our Kirby hands. Let's get some good. Can you do some good Kirby hands?
It was Jack Kirby's birthday at the 28th.
Yeah.
105th,
I think it was 105th birthday.
Yeah, look at that. There you go. That's perfect. There you go. Perfect. That's a good flat fingers. Guys, thanks so much. Have a good night. Don't need to tip your server. See you next week.